We had a funeral yesterday here at St. John's for longtime parishioner Mac McPherson. And many of the members of Mac's family were from a Baptist tradition. And what kind of caught me off guard was that when the church filled up yesterday, it filled up from the front toward the back. Very different than how Episcopal churches tend to fill up, which we see today. Hello back there. There's some empty spots up near the front, and that leads me to wonder if that's because you knew that I was going to talk about a scary topic today, a topic that's scary for those of us in the Episcopal Church, evangelism. That's a scary word for us Episcopalians, but it's an important word. And it's an important thing for us to do as followers of Jesus. Our theme this morning is all about evangelism, starting with our reading from Genesis and the calling of Abram to be the leader of people of faith all around the world. We talk about the Abrahamic traditions of Christianity and Judaism and Islam. All three of those major world religions are Abrahamic traditions, which means we all believe in the same God. We're essentially cousins. Now, sometimes we have a hard time getting along with each other, and I personally find that to be kind of silly because we are believing in the same God, just expressing that maybe a little differently. But we all have that ancestry with Abraham, who was told, "I will bless you, and you will be a blessing." Has to do with evangelism. And then, of course, in our gospel reading, we have the story of Jesus calling Matthew, whom we know of as Matthew the evangelist, the Matthew that the Gospel of Matthew is named after. Now, scholars these days don't believe that Matthew actually wrote the Gospel of Matthew, but the Gospel of Matthew is attributed, the name of the Gospel of Matthew is attributed to the same Matthew that we heard about this morning. And Matthew was a tax collector. And that doesn't sound like a big deal to us in the 21st century. I mean, none of us like paying taxes, let's be honest, right? But being a tax collector is a perfectly noble profession. There's nothing wrong with being a tax collector if that's the kind of work that we tend to do. Before I moved to Phoenix, I served at a hospital in Ogden, Utah, and there is a big IRS business center there, and if you happen to pay your taxes by mail, you probably remember writing Ogden, Utah on the address for your taxes. Well, that's a center that's there in Ogden, Utah, and it's one of the biggest employers there in Ogden. Nothing wrong these days with being a tax collector. But in the days of Jesus, being a tax collector was not a good thing. The tax collectors were seen as untrustworthy. They were seen as sneaky. They were seen as sinners. They were seen as undesirable people. And part of that comes from the fact that they were not paid a salary. So the tax collectors would go out into the community and collect taxes from the people and overcharge because they'd scrape some off the top, giving to the empire what the empire needed, but then keeping the rest for themselves to pay their salaries. And so there was no way to keep a track of how much money was going to whom. And so tax collectors were not seen as the desirable people that you wanted to hang out with. And Jesus has asked this question: why do you hang out with the tax collectors? What's going on here? Why would you call this guy to be one of your followers? And Jesus' response is, those who are well have no need for a physician, only those who are sick. And I think that's an important thing for us to remember as a worshiping community, right? If we look at that as a metaphor. Because there are a lot of people in the world today who are seeking a church home. They're seeking a church home where they can find healing. St. Augustine is known for saying a lot of things, a lot of very important things. And one of those things that he said is that the church is a hospital. The church is a hospital where people come seeking healing and seeking comfort. It's our responsibility to be that hospital when people come seeking. Every church says that they are welcoming. I assure you, if you go to any church website, they will say you are welcome. They may not say you are welcome as you are. They may have conditions apply. Right? And so it's our responsibility as Episcopalians to make sure that people know that when they come in our doors, that's not the case. We love you and affirm you and welcome you as you are, and we want you to find this place to be a place of healing. Right? Now, what does that mean for those of us who are already in the pews here? Well, Father Bill talked to us a few weeks ago and talked about the importance of making church feel like a home for those who don't already have a church home. Right? That means that maybe sometimes we might have to give a little bit more of ourselves than maybe would fit our preferences. Sometimes I hear people say things like, well, why do we have the screens instead of using the prayer books? I'll tell you why we use the screens. If you were coming into an Episcopal church for the very first time and you had no experience with liturgy or a book of common prayer, what page would you think the principal service on the principal day of the week would be found? I would think it would be located somewhere near page 1. Do you know what page it's found on? 355. Would that intuitively be your answer? Would you intuitively know to turn your prayer book to page 355 to find the principal worship service? I wouldn't. But if we have screens, well, then everybody who comes in can follow along and be at the same place at the same time. And that's an important way that we can help make people feel comfortable when they come in the doors. A lot of people who are seeking church these days are coming from either situations where they are completely unchurched, or maybe they're coming from a church community that was not liturgical. And so immediately when somebody comes in, they're already uncomfortable because it's different. Right? They might see me wearing this, and they might say, why is that guy up there wearing a dress? Right? And if I tell you that this is called an alb, and the alb represents my baptismal garment, well, then maybe that makes a little more sense. Right? But if you walk in the door and you just see me wearing a dress, you're already kind of leery. Right? So if we can add the screens, well, then we are making people, we're putting people at ease. Okay? When people come and visit a new church, their senses are up. They're paying attention to everything that's happening. They're paying attention to who said hello and how many times and for how long. Right? It's important for us to say hello and to welcome people and to let people know that we are here as a resource if they have questions. But at the same time, we don't want to overwhelm somebody. We don't want to just bombard somebody and make them feel uncomfortable. We need to make sure people are here on their own terms and at their own level of comfort. Right? So we want to make sure people feel welcome, but we also want to make sure that they feel as comfortable as they can. And we want to go out of our way to maybe yield some of those things that would be our preferences, right? For instance, prayer books. Right? But we want to yield those things so that we can be a community where those people might feel a little more comfortable. We're doing more and more of that as a parish. And I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that last night we had a game night, right? Because that's part of fellowship of the church. That's part of what it means to be the church, is to come together and to spend time together. In our baptismal covenant, we talk about the breaking of the bread and in the prayers, right, and in the fellowship. That's part of what it means to be the church, is to come together not just to worship, but also to spend time in community together. And when we do those things, we want to make sure that we are making the space as safe and as healing as possible. In the second half of the gospel passage today, we have these instances of Jesus doing some healing for people. And that's some of the things that we can do as a worshiping community, is we can be a place of healing, as long as we pay attention to what that means. Because we hear Jesus say the words, "Your faith has made you well." And sometimes when we hear that, we think about healthy wellness. I'm in good shape, and my lungs work, and my heart works, and I'm not in any pain. Right? We think of being well in that regard. But the word that Jesus uses is a Greek word, sozo, which actually means whole, like we sang about in our hymn before the gospel. Wholeness. And through our faith, we are made whole. And we want other people to be able to experience that as well. Brandy and my wedding anniversary was a few weeks ago. And so just about 8 years ago right now, we were in Rome. And when we were in Rome, we had lots of good meals, but there was one meal in particular that I really enjoyed. And she had a pasta with a red sauce, and I had a pasta with a white sauce. And it may have been the best plate of pasta I've ever had in my life, which is saying a lot because I grew up as an Italian American. So for this to be the best pasta I've ever had, that's really saying something. This pasta was so good that I wanted to share some with Brandy. And if we think about that, that seems a little silly, because by offering her some of my meal, right, I have less for myself, if you think about it in quantity. Right? But in reality, it was so good that I wanted her to be able to have some of it so that I could share that goodness with her. Right? So that was the benefit in me sharing, is that now I have something good in my life. I want her to have something good in her life. And that's something that we have as Episcopalians, is we have something good that we want to share. There's something that I've noticed recently, and that is that the Episcopal Church, hello, you're coming up to visit. The Episcopal Church is what I call the best kept secret in Christianity. Because we have a wonderful theology, and we have a beautiful liturgy, and we have a sanctuary where people can find healing from all walks of life. We just don't always do the best job at that E word, evangelizing, and letting people know who we are. Because if we let people know who we are, I assure you, they will come. And when they come, that's when we have to be mindful of how we are in community together. We have to make sure that things like the screens are welcoming. We have to make sure that it's as easy as possible to be here and to worship. That's why we have QR codes in the pew pockets. We have prayer cards. We have ways for you to get in touch with us, because we want to make it as comfortable and as easy as possible for you to be here and to simply be. Because when people come in and we can share that goodness that we already know is here, right, we want them to have a part of it. The church, as a previous Archbishop of Canterbury once said, the church is the only institution that exists solely for the benefit of people who are not its members. So when we evangelize, we're not evangelizing because we want more people in our pews. I mean, there is goodness in that. When we have a large gathering, right? There's fellowship, there's energy in the room, there's lots of singing, right? That's a good thing, but that's not why we evangelize. We don't evangelize because it feels better to us to have more people in the pews. We evangelize because we want others to know of the goodness that we already know. We want them to be a part of that. Because when we share the goodness of God, we realize that we don't actually have less of the goodness of God that we get to experience. We actually have more. Right? And the side effect is that it feels good. It feels good to do ministry. It feels good to bring people into the fold. It feels good to create a space where there is kindness and love and joy, and even a safe place if somebody expresses tears or sadness or pain. People these days have been burned by the church. as an institution. And when they think of the church, they're not thinking of the church as in the Episcopal Church or any particular denomination. The church is all a lot of people know. And so people are understandably skeptical when they come in the door for the first time. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that people know that we are sincere and we are genuine when we say who we are. That when we put it on the sign outside or we put it on our website, right, then the responsibility is on us to live into that so that when somebody comes in the door, they don't feel like they've been sold a bill of goods. That's happened so many times to so many people where they feel like they've shown up at a church expecting one thing and getting something else. Right? Like Matthew, the tax collector, the way Jesus welcomed him, we welcome everybody. And there's no conditions. Sometimes we hear of churches using this same passage as saying, come as you are, but don't stay as you are. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but there's no conditions to being a member of the body of Christ. The conditions are that we follow the two great commandments and we do our best to live into them, which is love God and love neighbor. And when we do that with one another and we do that in a way that the community sees and the community experiences, then I assure you people are going to want to have more of that. We have a unique situation at St. John's where there are eyes on our parish all across the country. I was in Connecticut a little over a week ago, and the Bishop of Connecticut, Jeff Mello, saw me and knew who I was. Right? Knew that I was from St. John's. Right? There are eyes on St. John's from all over the country, all over the church, which gives us a unique opportunity to continue to be that beacon of hope and of light that can help spoil that secret a little bit and get the word out that in the Episcopal Church, we love you and we mean it. So that's up to us to make sure that we are living into that agreement. And when people come, we show them love. And it's not conditional. It's not based on how frequently you come. It's not based on what you do when you come in the door. It's just a matter of coming in and being a part of the community. So like Matthew, we acknowledge that we don't always get it right. Sometimes we get it wrong. And that's okay, provided we continue to try to get better. Every day we want to be a little better than we were the previous day. So what I want us to do is to work together as a community to continue to be that place of welcome and of light and of joy, and to be mindful of those who come in our doors, and to be the hands and the heart and the feet of Jesus Christ in many varied and wonderful ways. Amen.